Mr. Bruff is the English teacher, but sometimes he teaches other things too.
Hello everybody and welcome to video 2 in my series based on the RE lessons that I've been taking. If you haven't seen video 1, let me just recap. I taught an RE lesson and I asked students to write down whether they believed in God or not and their reasons for their belief. A number of students did say they believed in God, and the ones who said they didn't believe in God put it down to two things. They put it down to the Big Bang and the creation of the world or the universe, and they put it down to the creation of life and evolution. And in this series of videos, I'm trying to look at how a Christian might respond to the two arguments that were made there. So in the video last week, I looked at the scientific proof that the earth was created, that it had a starting point, and I looked at the scientific sort of data about how amazing the world is, and I said that it seems to me that that ties in with the biblical account that there was nothing and then God made the world and he made it so amazing. It's too amazing to be an accident. In today's video, we're going to look at the origins of life. Really, put it simply, we're going to look at how did the first living thing come to exist. And I want to start with looking at the concept of intelligent design. Intelligent design is something that's very interesting. It's not necessarily a Christian idea, but it is something that I think personally backs up the Christian theories of creation, all the rest of it. So let's have a little look here. The key question we're going to look at today is there proof of design? So in life, in living things in the world today, is there proof that they were designed? Now, George Gaylord Simpson, the evolutionist, in his book, The Meaning of Evolution, wrote this: "We are the product of a mindless and purposeless natural process which did not have us in mind." Okay, and that is very much the evolution standpoint, that it was without purpose, without thought, it's not about us, it just happened. Well, intelligent design would argue against that, and I think you're going to find this very interesting. This is just first a little bit about science. So this guy on the screen, Peter Lipton, he talks about the inference to the best explanation, which is where we look at all of the evidence, and by looking at the evidence, we come up with the best possible answer for something. So I've written there EGCSI. So if you've seen any detective programs, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Picture the scene. There's a dead body lying on the floor, blood on the back of their head. Next to the dead body is a baseball bat, and the top of the baseball bat is covered in blood. There's then size 9 footprints leading away from the body. The footprints are got blood on them or whatever, to a window which is wide open. Now, we use this thing in science, in forensics and all the rest of it. Inference to the best explanation. Inference to the best explanation, looking at the evidence and coming up with the best possible answer for something. In the case of the dead body there, would be that the person was killed by being hit on the head with the baseball bat, that the murderer wears a size 9 shoe, and that they escaped out of the window. Now, of course, we'd look at all of the other details and the way the blood splattered and fingerprints and all the rest of it, but you get the point I'm making, that science is about looking at the evidence and then coming up with an explanation for that evidence. Okay? Now, intelligent design says that certain features of the world are best described as having been designed. Okay? So that is a stark contrast to evolution, which says we are just the product of a mindless and purposeless natural process which did not have us in mind. Intelligent design would say, when we look at certain things in the world, inference to the best deduction would say that they were designed by a designer, they were created by a creator. Okay, and intelligent design is not necessarily a Christian thing. That isn't then to make the step and say, and that creator is the God of the Bible, but it's just looking at the evidence and trying to work out does it seem to have been designed? And what we're going to do is have a look at a couple of interesting examples of design. The first one that we're going to look at is a very interesting plant called the bucket orchid. And this is a very old school video. It's about 5 minutes in length, and it is quite a grainy video, and it's got a cheesy soundtrack and all the rest of it. But please do watch this video and see what you think about it.
Bucket orchid. It clings to branches with its roots embedded in a nest of ants which guard it and supply it with nutrients. But the ants do not pollinate it. This is done exclusively by a species of beautiful iridescent orchid bee, the plant's one and only pollinator. In the early morning, the orchid opens. Almost immediately, it begins to drip a clear fluid from 2 glands into the bucket part of the flower. At the same time, the orchid gives off a scent highly attractive to its pollinators, its little male bees. But the bees come because their chance of reproducing depends on what the orchid is offering. It is a waxy substance they scrape off with specially modified front legs to make a perfume, a sort of aphrodisiac, essential to attract and stimulate female bees. No wonder males fly in from up to 5 miles away. In the ensuing dogfight, the inevitable accident occurs. Though it's no accident as far as the orchid is concerned. The purpose of the fluid now becomes clear. Unlike the water lily, the orchid's intention is not to kill its victim. Oddly enough, it must now start to help him to escape. The bee is on the point of drowning when it discovers a small escape tunnel with a rather conveniently placed step. Just when it seems nothing can prevent escape, the top and bottom of the tunnel close in, holding the bee in a vice-like grip. Struggle and strain as he might, he is held firm, while the orchid glues 2 little yellow pollen sacs on his back. It takes about 10 minutes for the glue to set, and only then does the orchid release him. The bee is now fully fledged to go-between, but he must wait to dry to complete his escape. But the orchid's sexual plan is far from complete. Bees which bear no pollen merely pass through the system. It must wait for one carrying pollen sacs from another orchid before it can be fertilized. But what a difference when this bee tries to make its escape. The flower has a device which grabs the pollen sac from his back. There, the amazingly complex plan has worked. despite its apparently foolproof design, Coryanthes is taking an awful risk. Were its bees to disappear, even become scarce in numbers, this beautiful orchid would vanish forever.
Okay, you still with me? Well, I think that is an amazing video, albeit a little bit cheesy, corny, and old school now. I think that in terms of the purpose of this video, that's a great example of something by which the inference to the best deduction would say that was designed and created. The bucket orchid, the mechanism is so precise. The glands to keep the bucket topped up with liquid, the provision of an exit tunnel complete with a little step to get up onto it, the mechanism that holds the bee, the glue that holds the sacs in place, the mechanism that places the sacs in exactly the right place so that they don't get knocked off, but also so that they don't hinder the bee when it's flying. And if any of those parts was missing, the plant would die out. And I think that is just mind-blowing. It's an example of what we call irreducible complexity. It can't evolve step by step. If one step was missing, the orchid would die out. If one of those bits wasn't there from the beginning, then within one life cycle of the plant, the whole thing would die out. There's no way that that could evolve over time. All of those different pieces had to be there, right from the beginning. And if we look back at Peter Lipton talking about the inference to the best explanation, looking at all of the evidence, would we agree with George Gaylord Simpson? We are the product of a mindless and purposeless natural process which did not have us in mind. Or would we have to say that this is an example of intelligent design? It suggests that certain features of the world are best described as having been designed. Well, I think it's quite clear that that is a great example of a call for intelligent design. So let's look at something else. What does the Bible say if it seems to have been designed? The Bible says in Genesis 1:12, the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. So the Bible says, yes, it is incredibly complex and amazing and sophisticated and brilliant. And it's like that because God designed it. Evolution says there is no God, there is no design. It's all accident and random chance. So you make your own conclusions on that point. Okay, moving on to DNA. This is a little picture of DNA here. If you don't know about DNA, it's basically a code, and it instructs amino acids on how to build cells. It's the code for creating life. It's like two pieces of rope with beads on which spell a message or code. So imagine these are bits of rope, and then between them are all these beads, but these actually do speak a code. They are a message on how to build life, amino acids, how to create life. Now, going to get a little bit complex. DNA was discovered by Francis Crick in 1952. He won the Nobel Prize for discovering it, a massive, event. And through studying DNA, he came to the conclusion, as scientists today have, that for such a complex code to work, it needed to be created by a form of intelligence, that information-rich messages which contain life-giving information cannot create themselves. There are no known examples of matter creating code in the whole universe. There had to be a creator who had a message to create, and a coded system can only be created by a form of intelligence. Let me give you an example of that. Here we have two different types of cell. The most complex non-living cell, like the cell of a snowflake, is massively different to the most basic living cell, which is they're just miles apart in terms of complexity. And Francis Crick came to the conclusion that it was impossible for life to have occurred by chance. The more scientists study it, the more they agree the creation of life is impossible without a creator. A code system like DNA cannot be created by anything else other than a form of intelligence. I can make this really simple for you to understand. Imagine if you get a text and you open your phone, have a look at your phone and you've got this text and it's just gobbledygook like that. So you think, well, that doesn't mean anything. It's probably a pocket text. I've probably sort of lent on my phone and it's just pressed all those numbers and characters and sent to you. That happens from time to time. But imagine you've got the code, you've got the text, make his nose look like Brad Pitt's nose. Well, that does make sense to us. And it's interesting to think about why it makes sense. We understand this code because the arrangement of letters is organized into the English language to communicate a message which we understand. So it's clearly a code and a coded message which we can understand. Now, the phone did not make the message. It needed an intelligent creator to do that. It needed me to put that text in. And that is exactly the case with DNA. DNA is a complex code which makes sense, and it is a message on how to build life. But DNA cannot make itself. It needed an intelligent creator to do that. Now, very interestingly, Francis Crick, this is him when he was a lot older. Francis Crick knew this, but he was an adamant atheist. So he was faced with the difficulty that a lot of scientists seem to be faced with in the things I've been covering in these videos, that things point to a creator, but they don't believe in God. Now, what did Francis Crick come up with? He came up with the idea that it was in fact an alien life force that had come to Earth millions of years ago in an unmanned spaceship and started human life on the planet. That's his belief. Now, I've got a clip, but I'm going to skip it for copyright reasons. Now, you might be sat there thinking that's ridiculous to think that it could have been aliens, but of course scientists in this position are faced with a real difficulty. There had to be a creator. They either acknowledge that it could be God, which is certainly where my standpoint would be, or if they are adamantly against God, they've got to come up with some other answer. Of course, the Bible tells us, I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their host. So God tells us in the Bible, he made it. And that certainly fits in with the scientific proof that it was created. It couldn't create itself. And it's my belief that whatever you believe, whether you believe in God or not, you have to believe in something supernatural to answer this question on where did life come from. If you don't believe in God, you could turn around and say, well, it could be aliens, or, well, there aren't many other options. But you have to believe in something that requires faith, a belief in something that you can't see. So my belief ties in with the Bible. It was God who made it all. Okay, let's look at just a little aside here. Very interesting thing, the theory of human origin and where we all came from. There is a theory which is a absolutely sort of widespread held belief in the scientific community now, but it originated in the 1980s when mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomes were tested, and they seem to point back that we were all originated from what is now called the out of Africa model, that we originated and descended from one man and woman. That is now the scientifically held belief, that all humans descended from one man and one woman. Now, when I read this online, when I heard this at a lecture a couple of weeks back, I was just amazed because, of course, the Bible tells us that we all originated from one man and one woman. Let us make mankind in our image. God created mankind in the image of God, male and female he created them. Of course, we're talking about Adam and Eve, and the Bible has been saying this for thousands of years, and science now is just coming round to the studies are proving that we did originate from one man and one woman. That again ties in with the Bible account of Adam and Eve. Okay, just to finish this video then, let's take a look at evolution. Evolution is such a huge and contentious issue that particularly in schools, I find students just believe it to be absolutely true and don't understand that it's a theory. And I just want to cover a couple of main things about it. The first thing I'll say is that Christian viewpoints on evolution do differ. There is no one sort of Christian viewpoint on evolution. But I'll just tell you some of my thoughts, and we'll go from there. So no one is debating that there are lots of fossils, okay? I agree that there are millions of fossils in the world that are fossilized creatures, many of which don't exist today. So that's the starting point. And here on the screen is an example of one of those fossils. Now, the bit that Christians, or some Christians, would debate, and I would debate, is this concept that actually we as humans evolved from different creatures, that evolution took place, macroevolution on a grand scale, that we started off billions of years ago as little cells and evolved into bacteria and fish and monkeys and up to us. Now that is the part of the sort of the puzzle that doesn't work for from a Christian viewpoint. So why not? Well, obviously that would then conflict with the biblical story of God creating man and woman, which I think we just looked at on the screen, didn't we? Here we see a problem because the theory of evolution would suggest that man and woman weren't created. They evolved from other creatures. Well, let's have a look at a couple of things. The first thing is, it is just a theory, evolution. And this guy here, Steve Jones, is one of the big names in evolution theory. He's a geneticist, a Welsh geneticist, and he is an absolutely ardent atheist. He really does not believe in God. If you Google him, he really doesn't think that intelligent design and the concept of intelligent design has any value. But he made what I believe is a massive sort of statement in one of his books called Almost Like a Whale, The Origin of Species. So I've got two quotes from the book on the screen. The fossil record, in defiance of Darwin's whole idea of gradual change, often makes great leaps from one form to the next. So what he's saying is that the fossil records we've got, the picture that you just saw of the supposed evolution that humankind has gone on, is not, as Darwin would say, little small step changes, but as actually massive changes. It would suggest that in terms of the fossils that we have, there have been massive changes, massive jumps. Far from the display of intermediates to be expected from slow advance through natural selection, many species appear without warning, persist in fixed form, and disappear, leaving no descendants. Geology assuredly does not reveal any finely graduated organic chain, and this is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against the theory of evolution. So what he's saying there is, actually there is no evidence of this step-by-step evolution and the intermediary, the sort of between stages of evolution. He goes on to say, as more bones turn up, the story becomes less clear. In spite of a century's claims of the discovery of missing links, it is quite possible that no bone yet found is on the direct genetic line to ourselves. With so many kinds to choose from, so few remains of each, and such havoc among the relics, none of the fossils may have direct descendants today. This is a massive thing. Now, let me just say, for the sake of Steve Jones, because I don't want to take him out of context, Steve Jones believes in macroevolution. He believes in the picture I just showed you. He believes that we evolved from creatures and monkeys and all the rest of it. He just is saying here that we very probably have not found the missing links in those stages. So he's not saying he doesn't believe it. He does believe in it. But he is admitting that all we really have in the fossil record are lots of different creatures, and that it is very likely that we are not descendants of any of them. So that actually ties in with the Bible account that God created all of these creatures. Sorry about that picture, I'll come to that in a second. You know, God created all of these animals, and all of the fossils, I would agree, are creatures of the past that God created that have maybe now died out or not. But the jump to then say that we've evolved from them, that they're all stages in our evolution, that we can say, you know, we were once this creature. We have here Steve Jones, one of the big names in evolution, who adamantly believes that, but he is admitting that we have yet to find any real proof of it. I think that's from my point of view, that backs up the Christian argument that we didn't evolve from animals and creatures, that God created all of those and us, but there's no evolution from one to the other. Okay, let's have a look at Lucy. You've probably seen Lucy or other creatures like her, and I use the word creatures loosely, Lucy. Sorry, the picture's blurry, but this idea of a kind of creature that is half monkey, half man, that sort of thing. Now, how do paleontologists and all the rest of it come up with these ideas of what we once looked like? Well, one of the things they do is they find bones, and when they find bones, they put them together to make a skeleton. But did you know, and this is just a little fascinating aside, that this example, Lucy, the bones that make up Lucy were found from a distance of 200 feet to 1 mile away from each other. So they did not dig up a skeleton which looked like this, all in its completion. They dug up perhaps a leg bone, and then a bone from a finger, and then 500 feet away a skull, and 800 feet further away from that, maybe something else. And it's my belief, and it's been proven that, mistakes are often made in paleontology along these lines. It's my belief that they found bones from different creatures, different animals, maybe a couple of humans as well. So they've put them all together like a jigsaw puzzle in what they believe we once looked like. And that happens a lot in paleontology. They'll find just a finger bone and they will map out a whole creature that they believe that looks like. And you'll find in studies of paleontology that their fossil records and their charts always change, because with the discoveries of new fossils and new bones, they sort of readjust and think, oh, we've got that wrong. Actually, that belongs over here in this category. And it really is a changing world. But I just want to challenge this idea of this creature, this half monkey, half man, that you might see a picture of it and think, well, that's been discovered and proven then. It's not as simple as that. These bones have been found all of, hundreds of feet away from each other and placed together in a suggestion that that was all one creature. But of course, my argument would be that that wasn't at all just one creature. What does the Bible say? Well, the Bible says God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly. Every winged fowl, God saw it was good. Blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. So the Bible would say, and does say, that God created all of these amazing animals, all of them. And but we didn't evolve, so God created it, but we didn't evolve from them. Big difference there. So we're coming to the end of the video now, and I think that between this video and the last video, personally, I think we've raised some very interesting questions, and we've looked at this idea that the universe and all life within it would point to intelligent design, would point to having a creator. That, and I think, that's the inference to the best deduction. You've seen the Peter Lipton idea would be there was a creator. But of course, having a creator is a big jump away from proving that the Bible, Christianity, and God and Jesus are the answer to who this creator is. We saw, didn't we, that Crick thought that there was a creator, but he said, well, it was aliens then. So in next week's video, we're going to look at the Bible, and I'm going to do a history assessment of the Bible and what we know about the Bible from a historical, scholarly perspective. I hope you found this video interesting and thought-provoking and useful. Thank you.